Hey guys, so I was going through my millennial checklist, and I think I'm finally reaching a new milestone.
Your what list?
My millennial checklist. You don't have one?
No. What's on it?
All right, here, I'll run through mine real quick. So I started off by not applying myself or playing team sports in high school.
Check.
Then there's accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt on a degree I don't use.
Check.
Not investing early in my career and missing out on one of the longest bull runs in history.
Check.
Get married for the first time.
Check.
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 No complaints.
I have complaints.
And then I've just recently completed settle into a dead-end job.
Check.
Check.
And now I'm coming up to choosing to invest in real estate during a terrible housing market with interest rates at a 25-year high.
Nice, bro. Knocking those out of the park. I don't see the problem here.
Thank you. I'm really proud of all my hard work. And I think I'm really ready to get into the real estate game. But I just have so many questions. Do I fix and flip? Do I buy a rental? Do I need an LLC? Is there a silent T in mortgage? There's so much to this.
Mortgages? Mortgage?
That's Spanish.
Mortgage.
I'm not dumb, but how do I invest in real estate?
Welcome
To the I'm not dumb, but
Podcast.
where we won't claim to have the answers to life's deepest questions.
But we'll give you an exciting journey
Into the realms of knowledge
you never knew you needed.
might be mainstream.
But not common knowledge. From artificial intelligence to conspiracy theories, no topic is too taboo for us to explore. Let's get curious together.
I'm Rob, your host for today, joined by the man who did his dissertation on bachata, Caesar.
You.
The host who can cut and paste an award-winning podcast, Victor.
How y'all doing?
And our third co-host, whose background noise has more airtime than he does, Chris.
Hey. That was good.
What was that?
So we've all heard it from our parents and our older friends and coworkers. Buy real estate. It's a great investment. Buy a property. Land's an asset. You need equity. Well, this year, I'm trying to get equity, son. I want to invest in real estate, but it seems like there's too many options. So today, we're going to cover choosing the right option to invest in real estate, tangible first steps that we can take, and then some common mistakes for the newbie investor.
Wait, you're gonna show us?
Don't worry, bro. I got a guy. So if you're looking to learn about all things real estate, we've got the guy who literally wrote the book on it. Today, our special guest, Anson Young, is the author of Finding and Funding Great Deals, the hands-on guide to acquiring real estate in any market. Anson is a licensed real estate agent, investor, and owner of Anson Property Group, based in Denver, Colorado. He's a seasoned professional who's completed over 100 wholesale deals and 75 flips, and whose current mission is to help homeowners build long-term wealth. Anson, welcome to the show, buddy. Great to have you.
Welcome.
Hey, how are you guys doing? I feel outnumbered here.
We'll go easy.
There's no one in this podcast that can beat you up.
I don't know if I believe that, but I appreciate it.
Rob claims to know jujitsu, but I've actually never seen him
I just
fight
paid
anybody.
the monthly membership. And then
Okay.
yeah.
Eventually, he's going to go. Eventually.
Eventually,
Okay.
I think this is my year. I've been training. Well, my credit card's been training for 3 years now, but I've been there for a few times. But why you into martial arts?
No, well, I was gonna say I got sat on by some purple belts for like a month,
Yeah.
and then decided it probably wasn't my thing. So, like those guys are like, I don't know what it was. Like the blue belts were hard, but man, something about those purple belts, they're like just made out of a different material. They're brutal.
Yeah, it's something about when you hit that level, they can't lose for some reason. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
When
They're
I
like-
first went against the blue belt, I was like, this guy's like, he should be arrested for walking down the street. Then I got to a purple belt and I was like, I can't even grab this guy.
Heck yeah. But it's good that your credit card's working for you
Yeah.
in your stead.
Yeah, and I'm getting tons of points off of it. So I mean,
Oh,
it's
good. Good.
Yeah.
It's beneficial.
No, I've been listening to a lot of your other podcasts all week, and I'm so excited to kind of get into this and just talk to you about it. And I know everybody else was. I know Victor's been listening to it all week too. So
Yep.
Yeah, I don't usually get nervous for these things, but you guys had such good questions, and you guys actually had like pre-work, which not a lot of podcasters do, of like, hey, I actually listened to your stuff and, now we're going to talk about it. Usually it's kind of the same 20 questions. So I'm excited because you guys have some very insightful things.
Oh man, I think you built this up now.
You can thank ChatGPT for that.
Not
You won't
even.
take credit.
Not even. It's so funny now because when I go on other people's stuff and I read stuff and I'm like, I know ChatGPT wrote this. Like it has the same asterisk that ChatGPT will do, or it always uses the same words, and it never gets humor.
Sure.
Never gets humor.
You have to train it really well to get it to what you want it to do, or you have to run it through another. Like I just got introduced to another thing that you can kind of run it through to kind of make it normal, or you just say, write like you're in 7th grade, and then it won't use like those same crazy
Super big words.
Yeah.
Verbose and business landscape.
Yeah.
Yes, verbose. That's a good
You'll
one.
read through it and you're like, no human would ever talk like this. Like you're giving yourself away here.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was on Reddit and somebody was like, yeah, what I'll do is I'll have ChatGPT write it and then I'll put it in a language translator and then translate it back and have it write it over. And I'm like, that's a thing? Like, is that going to work? So we're going to try it on this episode.
Okay. Yeah. The whole transcript.
Gracias. That's all I got.
Can you say, ¿puedes hacerme un sándwich?
So when I think of real estate investing, I immediately think of like HGTV or, like a brother, sister, husband, wife, and sometimes both, depending on where you are, team. But we always see it, right? So it's like that dilapidated house.
How's this beauty looking?
They flood it with a ton of contractors. The husband's like tearing the sheetrock open. And then the wife's like matching like the pillowcases to the countertops. And then,
All right, guys, you ready for the grand reveal?
20 minutes later, they made $100,000. And then they pan to the family in the backyard having a barbecue and everyone's happy, right? That's like the first thing that goes to my mind. So they do make it look fun and exciting, but is real estate investing as glamorous as it's portrayed to be? Or are these real estate gurus, in the Lambos on TikTok, are they lying to me?
Well, that's a lot to unpack there. I'd say for the most part, that's not what it's like in either respect. There's kind of the idyllic, model couple who are, swinging sledgehammers in the house, flipping for $100,000, like you said. And then you got the guys on TikTok. And I say like, it's in the middle of that, but it's way more boring for the most part. Mm-hmm. Like, if somebody had to follow me around for 24 hours to see what I do, it'd be just a lot of computer work and emails and, being on the phone a bunch. Going out there in high heels and swinging the sledgehammer is cool for the camera, for those HGTV shows. But for the most part, we're not, doing any of that.
So the day-to-day is for you right now is mostly like in an office, kind of analyzing, trying to find out new prospects or stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, relationships with contractors, with lenders, with, analyzing deals, talking to agents, those kind of things. If I was out at like a job site all day, every day, then, lending wouldn't get done and finding new deals wouldn't get done. So I think it paints a very skewed picture of like, you're just having fun on the job site all day. And it's like, it doesn't capture the part where you're like tearing your hair out, stressed out about, making that hard money payment or whatever. Or like if something goes wrong and the property floods, contractors don't show up, and like it doesn't show any of that stuff. That's kind of the more reality of it.
I would hate watching that show. I'm not gonna lie.
I think I would kind of enjoy it. I think I would kind of enjoy it.
The house is flooded. I'm not watching this episode.
Yeah, it's true.
How are they going to get out of this one? Oh, they're burning it down for the insurance. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, on camera.
On camera. Oh, that's a bad idea.
If you watch TikTok or Instagram, they're like, dude, just do this, just follow the steps. And,
I mean, in some respects, it is like step 1, step 2, step 3. but like the amount of work that goes into each one of those steps, and also, like you have money to, to put into this. If not, then your job, then it's a lot harder.
Right.
But, like on paper, it's simple. In reality, there's a million things that can go wrong, or a million things that you don't know about. And so a lot of people, they get so scared, and they get so like the reality of it hits, and then they just never take action because they're just literally just paralyzed by like, what happens if I can't sell this house, or what happens if the buyer walks away, or what happens, and so there's kind of two sides of that coin of like, they make it look easy, and then there's a bunch of people who just aren't doing anything because they're paralyzed, terrified of how hard it is.
Right. So if someone wants to get into it, and they see this stuff and they're like, you know what, I might have the means, either I got the money and I got no time, or I got time and I got no money, or both, like, what are common ways that people get into real estate investing? Like, what are the options? Is it just flipping a house? Is it, just buy low, sell high, or what are the ways to get in? And we've seen, like, I've seen REITs in all these different ways. Like, what are the more common ways that people get in?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because if you don't know, you don't know. And there are probably 20 ground level ways to get into this business. And so, if you are one of those people who have more money than time, and you just have no interest in learning real estate, wanting to go buy it, haggling with contractors, negotiating with agents, if you don't want to do any of that, you can just throw your money into a REIT.
So you're probably thinking, what's a REIT? Let's break it down. A REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. It's a company that owns or operates properties and gives you, the regular Joe, the opportunity to buy shares through mutual funds or ETFs. The company makes its money from the rent, and you, as a shareholder, now get a small cut of those profits. Now, let's get back to the show.
You can throw your money in with a syndicated fund that's buying, apartment buildings or something, where they go, put 20,000 in, and you get a guaranteed return, or I guess nothing's guaranteed, but you get a return. So there's that passive type, all the way to, people who buy their house to live in and rent out rooms in their house. That's commonly called house hacking, where they either buy a house, they rent out rooms, or they buy a duplex, they live in one side, rent out the other. That's a really, really easy way to get started versus jumping into buying your first rental, or buying your first flip, or going into what's called wholesaling, kind of you're being a middleman between a seller and another investor, and just keeping kind of the money in the middle. There's, probably 10 other spectrums inside of there. But, if you don't have any time and you have the money, then probably something passive might be better for you. Or even, and if you have a lot of time, but not a lot of money, there are other options for you. And especially if you need a place to live. I live in Denver, which is not all that affordable. So a lot of our first time clients, they're buying a house hack where they can rent out the basement, rent out rooms in their house, Airbnb the other side of their duplex. Like those kind of investments, work out great in this kind of market. And so there's 100 ways to do it, but those are probably like the 5 most common.
All right. So house hack, I never heard of that. I thought it was like just setting up an Alexa in my house so the lights come on.
Alexa, play Despacito.
Yeah, it's it is a dumb term. Like half the people in our industry hate it, and half of us are just fine with, like, it's not going away. So
isn't that just called just renting? Renting out part of your home.
Or get a roommate.
Well, yeah, exactly. My friend Katie is just like, we used to call it having a roommate.
These damn millennials don't call it anything.
I know you have to have like a special term for it. But no, it's like, I have clients who are renting out their garage, like they live in the house, they don't have any roommates, but they rent out their garage or an RV space next to their house, or the shed. They rent out the basement to, traveling nurses. Cool. like I wouldn't call all of those things roommates, but there are ways to, even if you have an extra, room in your basement that's just storage space, there's apps now where you can sell that by the square footage to somebody who just wants to put the Christmas stuff in your basement. There's a bunch of ways just to, generate some cash from your own primary residence. So they decided to call it house hack.
Now is because you said you're in Denver. Is Denver passing any laws or doing anything legal to kind of diminish Airbnb or things like that?
Yeah, we did that probably 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Where you have to be an owner occupant in order to Airbnb your house. So you have to live there. So you're either Airbnb a room, your basement, your the other side of your duplex or whatever that looks like, but you have to legally live at that address in order to Airbnb it, which it's honestly kind of nice because we're not like Austin, Texas or something where every other house is a short-term rental. And that just kind of brings in it's just, you feel like you live in a tourist. At least here, those are fewer and far between. And honestly, like those owner occupant house hackers can take the most advantage of those, which is pretty cool.
So you have experience with a lot of those. You've done house hacking, you've done fix and flips. I know you've done wholesale selling. Mm-hmm. So what's your current focus on now, or are you changing that over?
I recently changed it over in the last 2 years, but I've never house hacked because I've been married since I've been in the business, and it was just kind of we didn't want to take on roommates. We didn't want to buy a duplex, honestly, if it was up to me, I'd go back in time and house hack, or I'd kill Hitler and house hack or something. But
priorities.
Well, you can always go back and
9/11,
kill him.
and then
but
invest in Google and then
exactly.
Apple and kill Hitler.
And then kill Hitler. Actually, that probably would be better. Buy a bunch of Google stock or Apple stock and then kill Hitler. But no, so I used to do a lot of wholesaling and fix and flip, and now our current focus is buy and hold. So,
okay. So you switched over. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll still do wholesaling and fix and flip, but it's kind of like having a paycheck, or having to work for each paycheck versus buy something once and have it throw off a little bit of money every month and not have as much work. Flipping is great. The checks can be great. But at the end of the day, it's a job. If you're not constantly finding that next house, constantly, being on top of your contractors, constantly, going on the market, dealing with buyers, dealing with agents, and then going to closing, you're not getting paid. So rentals are just a bit more of a passive long-term game where you can eventually not have to, work day to day in the business is the idea. Whereas flipping, you either have to hire somebody to manage all that for you, or you have to get up every day and do those things. Otherwise, you don't get paid.
Oh, yeah. So there's a grind there. So you're looking at a short-term versus a more long-term investment strategy. And
totally.
It seems like you're switching over to a more long-term.
Exactly.
I mean, it's nice getting the big checks, though, but at least you get something coming in.
And I talk to a lot of investors, and pretty much all of them say, in hindsight, 10 years later, they go, I wish I just kept every house that I flipped, because if I kept everything that I flipped in 2013 and now in 2024, that house would be double in value. And so that quick 20 grand or 30 grand, that's great. That's, a lot more than some people make in a year, or half of what they make in a year. But at the end of the day, there is a cost there to selling it right away and then having to go on to the next one and not holding it for those 10 years and gaining the appreciation and the tax benefits and everything else that come from holding it for a longer period of time. So I chased short, dumb money for, most of my career. And now I'm trying to be a little about it.
Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Yeah. When I think about people I know and my situation, I get out of work at 7:30, I'm on IG all day at work, and then I see all these 24-year-old kids, And then I'm like, man, I could totally do this. But for a lot of younger professionals, like in our area too, that's where everyone is. We're up in the Northeast. A lot of people think that they can do it part-time. I don't know. Myself, I don't know if I could go into something like that full-time or jump into it. Like there's a lot, you got to be a go-getter, type of deal. But for someone like me that would maybe want to go at it part-time, what's like a better option to go with? I mean, fix and flip. Is it cool to just have someone manage that for you? Like they have that, or rentals where you just have a property manager who takes, I don't know, a certain percentage off the top. Like, because I feel like a lot of people I know that have a little extra income, they are wanting to do their normal jobs. They got a family and they're like, man, could I do something on the side?
Right. Yeah. And those are two options that I'd probably point you towards, unless you like just wanted to be hands off. And I would say throw it to a REIT where, a syndicator just bundles a bunch of people's money and puts it into a large project, like a 200 unit apartment building in Ohio or whatever. And so that's totally passive. You don't have to manage the property. You don't have to deal with the purchase. You have to trust, obviously, that operator and their track record so that you get your money back eventually or you get a return. But those historically have done really well. All the way to, I have clients and I have friends who are they work full time, IT professionals. They'll flip, 1 or 2 houses a year, use that extra income, max out their, IRAs, whatever they want to do with it. I have some that buy, turnkey rentals or just regular rentals where they go, well, I have 50 grand. And then they can buy something that gets them, a return that's acceptable for them. And that's a little bit more hands off. Like I said, the property manager takes care of the management, the day-to-day of the property. They take 8 to 10% of the rent every month. In return, they handle the broken toilets and the broken light bulbs and the tenant turnover and all of that stuff. So it's a little bit more passive. So if you're a professional, work all day, get out at 7:30, like you said, you may not want to go to a house and start installing flooring and doing all that stuff yourself. And so there are definitely options. And the nice thing about being in this business for so long and knowing a ton of people, both professionally and who do this full time, it runs the spectrum. Like I know nurses who own like 4 properties in Tampa, and I know IT professionals that flip houses. And, I know some other guys, even some bartenders that like they pool their money together and they put it in vacation deals because they just go like, I like real estate, but I don't care. Like, I don't want to go do all those things. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to throw my money into this deal and get a return. And so there's, a million ways to skin that cat. But, I'd say that those are some pretty good options for someone like you, a young professional.
You see those houses in the South and you're like, man, it's $150,000 house. Like I could totally buy that, but then you think about it. It's like, I'm not there. I don't know anyone in Alabama. I got to create like network with people in Alabama. I'm sure I got to trust somebody down there.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
don't know
a
any
lot
contractors.
And I'm sure,
I'm not
took
there
me
to
30
collect
minutes
rent.
to hang a thing on the wall,
I know nothing about the town either. Like it could be like the worst part of of Alabama. Like I have no idea.
Yeah, all those things are true.
Give me rent. You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door.
So you've been in the game for a while now. What have you seen that's like changed a lot from when you first started to now? And I know, like, besides the economy and how it is now, because I feel like that might be like a cyclical thing. But what else have you seen that's like fundamentally changed in the way you have to do business?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the way that we do business, I mean, lending has changed. So like lending standards and practices change, and those are mostly for the better. They all protect the consumer a little bit more. Whereas when I started in, 2006, it was just kind of stated income loans and all these crazy that kind of caused the collapse of it. But I'd say like fundamentally technology's come a long way. In even though we're kind of an old school business, I mean, we still send out mailers. What like company still does that besides a pizza place? send out thing. But like things on the tech side of like keeping up with clients, automating things on the back end, keeping you organized. And then some of the ways that we invest and that we get lists and stuff, like those have changed with technology, which is really good. So the kids these days have it a lot better than we did even 10 years ago on some of those fronts. But, like I think that just the guard is like, as the old guard kind of retires out and sells off their portfolios or pass away or whatever, the new kind of the 20 somethings now have just a whole different feel when it comes to real estate. And a lot of them are hustling way harder than I ever did, which is awesome to see. And then a lot of them have like just a different mentality where they want to do things more ethically. They want to do things more, they saw like kind of the taint on the business, for a better word, that like they're being slumlords and they're being, guys who own like 90 properties and never fix them up and, have owned them for 30 years. Like they see that stuff and they're rejecting. They're saying like, there's better ways to do this ethically. So I'm constantly impressed and excited on people half my age who are in this business who have this mentality of, they work really hard in it. And then they also have morality when it comes to being a landlord, which is weird to say, coming through this business for so long. But I mean, I've known so many guys who are in their 70s and 80s when I started, and I saw the way that they were doing things. And I was just like, I don't want to be a slumlord. Like, is this all this there is to this business? And so it is cool to see that a lot of that is changing, kind of this groundswell of people who want to do it better and do it more either sustainable, moral, or they want to do it, more eco-friendly as well. And so those things are super exciting.
I think that was like a big thing in New York in the, was it late 80s, early 90s, where they were just giving away buildings for like $1 because they were just slums, and they would just go in there and just turn it for a quick profit. And then you'd run into them later. You'd meet this guy who's just like this very blue collar guy. And then he's just like, oh yeah, he owns like 5 buildings that are worth like $3 billion like at this point. And you're like, what? Was I just born in the wrong time? What is going on?
Part of it, yeah. I feel that way too. Like, it feels like in the 70s, you could do almost anything. Like, you could go be an actor, like you could be a musician.
And then the president.
Yeah, you could be the president. You could own 5 buildings in New York. Like,
right.
It felt like the price was like $10 to do something, to like buy one of those buildings versus now. I agree with you.
By the way, I scanned your food and it comes to $1 gazillion. How much has a T-Rex and a Go Fish card?
Now, I have read that a lot of these larger corporations, a lot of these businesses are going in and buying, instead of buying commercial real estate, now they're heading into single family homes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been going on for a while. I mean, in like 2009, I've been part of the problem and I've been part of the pushback. And so, in 2009-ish, we were selling houses to hedge funds because we sold REO property.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
If you're thinking to yourself, what's an REO property? Don't worry, I got you covered. REO stands for real estate owned. Let's say you own a house and suddenly you can't pay the mortgage. The lender, usually a bank, that gave you the money to buy it takes the house from you. I know, dick move. They try to sell it at an auction, but can't. So they try to sell it using a real estate agent or by listing the properties online. Now, don't get too excited, potential homeowners. These houses are usually sold as is and are often a mess. So let's get back to it.
And then it really got bad, 2015 or 16, I think, when like BlackRock came into the game, and they're buying up, 10,000 properties. And like now we're at a point where now the interest rates are a lot higher and growth appreciation isn't as high and rent growth slowed down a bit. We are seeing like a sell-off on parts of those, but they're just selling off their worst property being the best one, which makes sense economically, right? Each one of us would be like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you own 500,000 properties and you're just selling off 50,000 of just worst trash, it's not doing a lot of help in those markets. But it does release some of that inventory to be able to be fixed up and used. And there's a lot of pushback right now. There's legislators who want to ban corporations from owning single family. And I would say I don't disagree with that. Like there's a point where BlackRock shouldn't own a half million. That doesn't, like what's the end goal of that? Is it hedge funds with more money than any of us have buy up, half the housing stock? And so anybody who's renting has to rent from one of these large hedge funds or something. Like, I think it can only be a bad thing.
You just gave away their secret. You might want to lock your doors.
Yeah. Right.
They're like someone behind you.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Anson, for coming.
Yeah.
This has been my kind of experience when I used to rent, which was growing up, I was always taught, negotiate. And then I got to the time where I was like renting, going to apartment, and I would go and negotiate, and they just go, no, we'd rather just have it empty. And I'm just like, wait, your building is half empty and you don't want to sell it to me, rent it to me because you don't want to lower your price. Do you feel like that's another symptom of like the corporate owning these like large complexes?
I think, yeah, I mean, especially on those big complexes, like there's probably procedures or, a playbook in place where that rental agent go below a certain price, and it's not up to them. And in order to get it to a decision maker, it would take like to get it to somebody who actually cares enough to weigh in on it. They're like, wait, we have corporate policies for pricing. What are you doing talking to me? Right. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously a thing there. And we saw it a lot in the bank-owned foreclosure days of Wells Fargo would own, 1 million homes that they had to take back. And so there, they would price it at a certain point, and it wasn't, it was way overpriced. And so, we would come in and say, look, that $200,000 doesn't make any sense. We could buy it for 120 all day right now. That's the price that actually makes sense to anybody because it's trashed. It's been vacant for a year, whatever. And we would get that same kind of pushback of like, they just go, well, we'd rather have it sit here for another 6 months before we lower the price to 120 than sell it today for 120, And so it's kind of a problem of, bureaucracy or against common sense. And like, I mean, those banks and those hedge funds and those guys who own large apartments, they're not very flexible on those. Renting it to you at half price today might mean, the word might get out. and then all your friends want half price units. I don't know.
So we talked about certain options, and I think it really depends on like what the person's looking for, right? They got time, they got money, they can choose different options. But if they were to pick an option, flip, rental, wholesale, house hacking, REITs, and they'd have to tailor it to like what's going to really work for them. What are I want to go into like some tangible first steps, right? So
yeah,
what should someone start doing? So someone wants to get into it. They've now chosen the way they want to go, right? They ordered your book. They read it front to back. What is something that they should start doing? Do they set up the LLC, right? Save the cash? Like what do we, order the business card, Cillian Rail? Like what am I doing?
Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
That's right. Let's just say that they chose something that involves house hacking, flipping, renting or rentals. Like those are all similar first steps, but they're going to want to obviously read up a little bit on what they want to do. House hacking is kind of a different ballgame than flipping. So you kind of want to make sure that you mostly know what you're doing. And then from there, usually your first step is probably to talk to an agent or a lender. Usually a lender I recommend first. That way you can have a good idea. Like a lot of people are kind of scared to talk to lenders because they go, I don't want to be exposed as somebody who's not like doesn't have enough money or credit's not good enough or whatever that is. But that's what those lenders are there for. They're, a good lender will be more than happy to talk you through goals, what you're looking to do, how much money you have on hand, if it makes sense for the strategy that you want to do. They'll get that picture for you of that pre-approval or whatever that looks like for you. And then they'll give you a game plan there, at least financially. They'll say, like, look, your credit's at 670. If we get it up to 700, you're going to save more money on your interest. So why don't we work on that for a couple of months, and then you'll be ready. Or they'll say, your down payment's not enough. So is there somebody, can your dad lend you 10 grand? Like, can we save up for another 6 months? Like, what does that look like? Well, they'll just give you a really good idea of kind of your financial picture and how much you're qualified for. So let's say your credit's good, you have enough money, but you're only qualified for 500,000 and all the houses in your area are 700,000. So at least then well, maybe I could buy a condo, a townhome, find a really, really, bad house that needs to be fixed up for 500 that's worth 700. So at least then, by talking to that lender first, you have a really good idea of what that looks like. And until you know what your finances are like, what your bankability is like, any next step is just a waste of time until you know. Like as an agent, if a buyer comes to me, like, look, I'm ready to buy. And my first question is, like, have you talked to your lender? And so I'm going to, like, as an agent, I'm just going to kick them back down to step one. If they send me a bunch of houses on Redfin, I'm just going to say, like, yeah, we can go see these houses. Let's make sure that you're pre-qualified. Boom, kick you back down to step one. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, you could be the flip master in your head, and you took the flip master class and you come to me and you go, I want to flip a house. Cool. How are you going to pay for it? Do you have the cash? No. Then either a hard money lender or a lender is going to be your first step. Boom, back down to step one. And so after step one, then you can start talking to, like, if you're going to be house hacking, if you're going to be flipping, if you're going to be buying a rental, your next step is to find a really good agent, vet them to make sure that they know what they're doing and know what they're talking about, that they're aligned with your goals. A good agent will be, your best friend when it comes to your goals. They're not going to stretch you outside of your box. They're not going to stretch you outside of your comfort zone. They're going to help you find the best property for your need. And so, those are kind of like the first 3 steps, like get some education, talk to a lender, and then get an agent on board. So then what areas that $500,000 will buy. Sometimes people don't even know. Like before I got into real estate, I couldn't care less about the neighborhoods that I was driving through, or like I didn't pay attention to any of that. And so I didn't know what 500,000 could buy me. So an agent should be like, look, actually that'll buy you houses, 20 minutes up north, or we can buy a condo or a townhome down here by work.
What do you mean? It's got a gun store and a liquor store right next to each other. It's a great area.
It's right above it.
It's going to sell right at it.
Exactly.
So I remember when we were talking before, we do the research, and a lot of the information, it's free. It's out there, right? So like, what are some of the resources that people have available to them that they don't really know? Like, is it a matter of just really going on Google and researching, or are there some other spots that they can go to?
Yeah. This is my exact journey when I first started, which, like, back in, I don't know how old you guys are, but 2005 is when I started in state. Back then, everything was like a forum online. Like Reddit didn't exist yet. So everything was like an individual forum. Mm-hmm. So I was looking for real estate investing forums, came across 2 that I really liked. One was realestate.com, which I don't even know what's there now, and then a site called Bigger Pockets. I liked Bigger Pockets forums a lot better. They were just laid out a lot nicer. And so now I'm basically a Bigger Pockets fanboy, because they have resources, education, podcasts, books, calculators. They have pretty much everything that you kind of need in one space. Uh-huh. And if you don't like that flavor, YouTube is also a pretty good resource. There's a lot of gurus and a lot of people pitching and trying to sell you on stuff on there. But most of this information is free, if not extremely cheap. Like buying $50 worth of books and watching, watching videos or listening to podcasts, like that should get you more than enough to be dangerous and get started for sure. So yeah, those are my kind of my two favorite resources. I think everybody's really lucky right now to be able to go onto YouTube and just figure something out, which is really cool.
Oh yeah, I fixed my toilet on YouTube. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at it, I was like, I don't even know what this. I opened it up and I was like, this is like the game Mousetrap. I was like, what? I hit this ball and then this thing goes down. This is amazing.
I'm a YouTube auto mechanic apparently.
Me too. I am too. Yeah, I was looking for like how to change out a fuel pump on like a 1994 Saturn. And the exact, like the guy had it's just a different color than mine, but it was a 1994 Saturn.
Yeah.
And it was it was just like, this is perfect. Like someone else did this and I get to learn from them. This is awesome.
He actually took it from your car and now you're just putting it back.
Is that my mailbox in the...
You seen a school teacher satin around here?
So when you're looking at these resources, right? Mm-hmm. What sort of strategy should you be developing in order to say, okay, this is a good deal? Or what should I be looking at in terms of, let's say, flipping? What should I be looking at to say, okay, I like this. I like the property. I like the price. Maybe I can get a profit out of it. What should I be looking at?
Yeah, man, that's a big question. So we got an hour. Let's go. So no, so like in short, there's kind of a few flipping formulas that are out there. You should kind of know the math of what that looks like, and you know it's all over online video books. But basically, there's kind of three things that you really need. One is the after repair value. So what is that house going to be worth after it's fixed up? After the granite goes in and after the gray walls go in and the gray floors, gray baseboard, after all that goes in, what is it going to be worth? Top of market, what can that neighborhood support? And then you're going to need to know the repairs, how much it costs to repair. And obviously, if you don't know that, you're a bit screwed. That's usually a big number. And then you need to know where you're going to land on your purchase price. And of course, there's a few other numbers in there of like holding costs, buying costs, selling costs, all of those things. But those are the big three. And once you know that, you could basically take your after repair value, subtract your purchase price, subtract your repair amount. And then after that, you would subtract your buy cost, your sell cost, and your holding cost. And that will get you to your profit basically. So you're kind of backing out the math from, if this property sells at 500, I put 50 into it, I bought it for 300, and then my, those other costs round up to 25,000. This is going to be my profit. And so for experienced investors, we have to usually go with what's our minimum profit that we'll deal with. 20 grand sounds like a lot, but it disappears really fast if there's inspection items, if it takes an extra month or two to sell, if like any of those factors can eat up $10,000 or $20,000 really. And so, for us, like our minimum profit's about 40,000. That just gives enough room for mistakes and just unknown. Even though we scope the sewer and the foundation's good, their inspector found something weird that we just did not account for. And that eats up, $7,000 right there. It took an extra 30 days to sell. That eats up another $5,000 there. And at that point, you're sitting at 31 grand, something like that. And if I only budgeted for, there were flippers who were like trying to like get away with like a $15,000 spread. And at that point, they'd be sitting at like $6,000 of profit in 4 months. Like that's not great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody would probably agree that amount of time and effort to make $6,000 is probably not great. But so in a nutshell, you just have to know a few key numbers, plug them either into a calculator or into a formula like that, And then you have a really good idea. But I think part of your other question was like, how do you know, I guess the area, right? Or like how do you know if that area is good or if that neighborhood's good? And some of that should be helped out with your agent, school district, crime rates. There are certain things that you kind of check on. But if you see, in that exact neighborhood, if there are properties that are fixed up, they've already sold, in the past year or so for that 700,000, you should be pretty comfortable with, okay, if other buyers are buying here, there's a track record of comparables, there's a track record of appraisals, nobody's, burning down their house for insurance money and getting out of there.
That's plan B. That's the next podcast.
Yeah.
That's at the end of my book.
Yeah. We have a few arsons lined up that we want to get on.
I think I could think of a couple times in my life where I wanted to hire an arson, but I don't know where to find them. So
It's a joke. I'm joking. I'm good at jokes.
It sounds great. And let's say we do all that. What's the one of the things that people run into that you just see all the time and people are just headed for it? Even if they try to do everything right, you got to have lost some money or something's got to happen.
Yeah, there's usually it comes down to contractors. None of you are
always
contractors. Right? We can just slag them.
Always.
Look at these hands, man.
Yeah.
This is. I haven't wielded a tool. The only thing I've had is a Xbox 360 controller in this hand,
and you still get calluses
around this area.
Call of Duty does that to you.
It does. Yeah, I mean, contractors usually is what it comes down to. So they didn't either vet their contractors really well, they didn't get a good referral for a contractor, or they didn't really put in the work to figure out if that contractor was communicate well. A lot of people just go with the lowest bid and they're like, I'm going to save so much money because this guy's going to do it for, 2/3 of the cost of the other guy. That always comes with a cost. It always comes back to bite. And so, yeah, I'd say especially, I mean, a lot of areas in real estate need a contractor to fix things up if you're doing it right. But it almost always comes down to just not putting in that work to vet the contractor. They'll either leave the job, they'll slow roll you. My friend Dan, he runs a meetup with me here, and he just got into his first flip. And it was he knows all this stuff. He's experienced, but he's just never done it himself before. And he minute 3, week 1, his contractor up and quit. And he was just I thought this guy was I've worked with him before. I thought he was awesome. He screwed me. How are these other people getting through this, without those advantages? And it always comes down to contractors. Sorry, contractors out there. I'm sure 10 of you are great.
Do you feel just in the current climate of how the economy is that contractors have the upper hand right now? Because I feel that last time I was trying to get work done, I would call contractors. Half the time they wouldn't even call me back, or they would come look at the job and it's just oh, this is not enough for me. And then they would just leave me there. And, it's well, what am I going to do? Am I going to rewire my house by myself? No.
Look, learn to rewire your house by yourself and then put it up on YouTube. The next guy who comes along who needs to rewire their house by themselves.
There you go.
There you go.
And that's 2 videos. That's one of me rewiring, and then there's one me putting out electrical fires. So it works out.
And then there's one of your family at your funeral.
That is content.
That is content. No, I mean that's a really good question and a really good insight, because talking to contractors who meet up, it's frustrating because they hold all the cards. They're they're terrible at customer service, or they have zero customer service. They have zero communication skills. They don't need you at some levels. And they can totally skip you for more expensive jobs.
Right.
Contractors who work with investors are a special breed because we want the lowest price. We want to beat them up and negotiate on everything. If I was a contractor today, I would just set up my business address in a semi-affluent area that has new build houses, and I would just finish basements all day. That would be my entire niche, is finishing out new build basements for $90,000 a pop. that's going to get your biggest bang for your buck. Like you want them to come over and do your bathroom for $5,000. They look at that and they go, or I can make 90 grand over here.
Right.
And so unfortunately they do hold so many of these cards. And so, yeah, it's hard to find good ones. And like, once you have good ones, you hold on to them for dear life. Like it's kind of a joke in our, like I run a networking group, right? We have 5,500 members. We have 11 meetups across Denver each month. And I get asked all the time, like, hey, can you give me the name of your GC? And that's like somebody that nobody ever gives away. They're just like, no, because if he works on your job, and he's too busy to work on my job.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I'll give away my subcontractors. I'll give away my hard money lenders. I'll give away my insurance people. But nobody's giving away their contractor.
He's like asking to share your wife or something. You're like, whoa, what are you doing?
Hey.
It's so true. Like, wait, she's supposed to be with me. Now that's a perfect analogy.
Now, is it true for like say new investors that when buying like the most rundown house in the most like, let's say, affluent neighborhood doesn't necessarily give you the best profit or best bang for your buck?
Well, I've always heard it the opposite way. Like, buy the worst house in the best neighborhood that you can. I feel like, you, as long as everything comes down to price, right? Everything to the deal. But if you're getting a really good deal in kind of a really good neighborhood, there's almost no way that you can go wrong as long as the numbers make sense. There's areas in your town, there's areas in my town where, if a property came up and it was, half the price of the others, but it's $1 million neighborhood. Yeah, that's a pretty big swing. Or let's just say a $2 million neighborhood. And so that house comes up for $1 million. There's a lot of reasons that it's priced that low. There's probably a lot of things wrong with it, but it's probably in a really good school district. It's probably in, a really good area where comparables are super high. There's kind of reasons why that property is worth so much. So, and I saw even a question on Reddit the other day, which was like, does anybody rent houses for $8,000? And like they're talking about probably $1 million and a half house. And it's like, yeah, like I have friends who are just on the other side of the bridge in Jersey, and they're renting like a 3-bed for $8,500. A friend of mine up here, he rents a $1.8 million house for like $11,000 a month. You think that stuff doesn't exist, but like there are executives, there's CEOs, there's people who just and Denver's big, but it's not that. Like, we know where all the Bronco players live. We know where all the Nuggets players live. And not all of them, buy their house. They'll just rent a house for $9,000 a month for their contract, for 2 years. And so there's a market for that $1 million house in the $2 million neighborhood. There's a lot of opportunities there. As long as the other number, if it needs $1 million in work, it may not make it. But if those other numbers make sense, it should be.
What's like the biggest challenge in the industry that you're facing today?
I mean, after a while, it feels like you solve a lot of the problems that like new people deal with. Like my problems are more people problems. Like finding deals is relatively easy. I know all the steps. I know what to do. But hiring an acquisition person, take those phone calls, training them, keeping them on task, probably not my wheelhouse. It's something that I have to do until I can just hire a manager for the business. But I'd say, like, for me, I guess that's a scaling problem, right? That's not anything else besides the personnel, HR, training. So the market isn't doing anything crazy. Interest rates are coming down. Houses are still selling. Houses are still, able to be found deals. And lending is still pretty much wide open for investors. So like those problems are all out the window.
Do you have like a ritual? Do you like go in after and do you like sage 4 corners of the house or like play the address at like a roulette table? Like you go straight to a casino. Do you have like a ritual after you buy a property or a house or something?
That's a really good question.
He needs an old priest and a young priest.
Yeah.
The power of Christ compels you.
I have like 2 schools of thought on that. I don't have something when I buy because it's usually just a checklist of things that like insurance, ordering the dumpsters, doing all the steps. But I have a step when we sell a house. My ritual is usually I'll just go from closing. And if I have time, I'll buy like a bottle of scotch. And it's not crazy expensive, like a $40 bottle. But I always feel like, I have to treat yourself. And so, but I think at the same time, on the other side of that coin is if you don't appreciate kind of that entire process, like going through the entire process of buying a house, like for most people, they only do it 1, 2, or 3 times in their entire life. If you're doing it 4 times a month, it can definitely feel mundane and, oh, well, it's Tuesday, like another closing. But I feel like if you don't appreciate that, don't, celebrate it in some way. And if you start taking it for granted, you're going to start slipping in other parts. And I've seen it I was in a business where we were selling REO property and we were closing on, we were selling like 400 properties a year. So we had a closing every single day for like the entire year, sometimes 2 closings. And the owners just got numb to it. Like it wasn't like most agents are like stoked to get like 1 closing a month. We're doing like 30, 40 closings a month. And so
it's another bottle of scotch. It's 7:00 in the morning.
Well, I just closed out in Seattle.
There was no scotch at that time, but there is something to where, they definitely took that entire process and that business and that income for granted. And I feel like that could be just a mindset that kind of down complacency and other things that can kind of eventually tank your business. So I try to appreciate every single deal that we do. And at the same time, a bottle of scotch is nice every now and then. So
that's awesome. I mean, if you're doing real well, you could just hire a bartender at your place.
That's right. That's right.
Another shot, man.
Yeah. Shots for everyone.
Have you, I'm sure with all the houses and all the real estate properties I've been looking at stuff. I'm like, I'll go in. I'm like, that's a beautiful house. I'm pretty sure it's haunted. Like, have you ever seen some crazy stuff? Like, have you walked in and like, you're like, did you close the door? Or did I? Like, have you seen anything or?
I wouldn't like paranormal. No. Meth heads. Yes. Fortunately.
There's a line there too.
I think they're sort of in the same category. There was a time, and not so much anymore because I do a lot of stuff out of state and I don't go see those houses. And again, that's another place. But there was a time where I was walking through like a couple houses a day, and this is kind of in the foreclosure boom. And so I've seen everything from burned out, everything is covered in black mold, every single wall is been sledgehammered by the tenant, concrete being poured down the drains. Everything in the middle, right? And the thing I learned really quick was when I knock on the door and go in, because we have a lockbox, we go in, is just to basically announce like, I'm just a real estate agent. I'm not the cops. And, if somebody's squatting in the basement or something, they know that I'm not necessarily a threat to them. I have, REO friends back in the day that would conceal carry into those houses. I never got to that level, but a little bit of precaution goes a long way. But there's been some hoarder houses, some houses where a death has occurred, like recently. That's why they're selling. They're spooky, but unfortunately, I haven't seen anything crazy. I've seen stacks of hoarding stuff up like 5 feet house, but I haven't seen any like ghosts.
Every place I rented, I usually get a holy water from my grandma, and I usually sprinkle like each corner just in case.
And then that night, his grandmother comes into the apartment.
I spent an hour last night in my bedroom talking to Fiorello LaGuardia, and he's been dead for 40 years.
You're a successful guy, right? You got a beautiful, you got a family, a business, published author. And we were big on like we read a lot and we try to we're trying to make something of ourselves up. What time you wake up in the morning? You got like a morning ritual? Are you getting up like 4:30?
I am Jocko. on a lot of levels, I wish I had that kind of discipline. Like I have a board over here that has like, not that it's followed or, but it has a morning, has, even has an ice bath like planned. I love all of that stuff, but like the reality is like my day starts at 7 a.m. When my son gets up for school. And because I usually stay up a little bit later than my family. So my wife goes to bed around 8, son goes to bed around 10, and I go to bed anywhere between 11, 12, and 1. So my day for a long time has been split in work during work hours, family during kind of after work hours. And then when everybody goes to bed, like I just usually go back to, I'll get some stuff done, or I'll usually little things, nothing that's like high lift. But so 7 a.m. is when I start, and nothing exciting is really happening. I want to go, ruck or go for a walk. But sometimes that just doesn't happen because it's cold. It's a lot of getting my son ready for school, dropping him off at 8:45, coming back, and then kind of going like, do I have time to go to the gym, or should I just go to, like, I guess I'll just be getting to work.
All right. So Anson, we got you, man. I mean, right now, I thanks for coming. Like, I feel pretty close. I feel like, you're part of the family. And I think you could be real with us. And we have some questions, I mean, you're from Denver. I've been a couple of times. Victor, I think he was stationed out in Colorado Springs. I think you could be real with us. What's going on with the Denver National Airport? Is there something going on there? Is Blucifer a real thing? Or can you just enlighten us and just tell us? Just be real with us.
Yeah, I thought that question was going in. But yeah, DIA is it's pretty awesome. It's like it's out, it's way like northeast of the city.
It shouldn't be called Denver at all. It's well away from it.
They annexed all this land that's just like the road to get there, and then the property itself. So it's considered Denver. So like since I think it opened in 95, but yeah, so it's a cool place. It has a lot of weird stuff inside it. And we, like my friend Andy and I, we weren't high school, but we had a lot of time on our, like I never wanted to be home. Andy never wanted to be home. So we would do fun stuff like just, the brand new airport opened. Let's just go out there for the whole day. So we, it was the time where you can go to the gates. Like there was no security, before 9/11, obviously. So we would like walk up and down the terminals, take the train all the way down to Concourse C and walk around, or maybe B was only open at that time. But in kind of the main concourse, the main area, there's like a lot of weird artwork. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but
I heard of that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at them right now. They're weird as shit.
No, yeah. It's like, who thought to put this in an airport? Like the one with the guy with the gas mask, and he's got like the big like sword.
It's called The
like
Children of the World Dream of Peace. That's the name of
like,
the.
There's just like a line of different like ethnicities of people, and it looks like he's just like about to like just take all their heads off or something. It is like the wildest thing to have an international airport, and we're like the second or third busiest airport in the nation. And not a lot of people probably see this because it's kind of by the ticketing counter, that area, but it's still like there's like a capstone that's like this big like stone monument. I don't know if you can look that one up, but it's like a Masonic state capstone that dedicates the airport. And then obviously all the different artwork, but there's a lot of rumors of stuff going on underneath the runway. Why did it go over budget by $1 billion? Like what's really happening? I don't really know what's happening out there. I know that Blucifer is real. We say hi to him every time we go to the airport.
We got to do that.
Yeah, Blucifer's definitely real. Blucifer definitely killed the guy who made him. So I don't know if you know that story where the guy who sculpted him, like the leg fell on him and he died. Son ended up having to finish the thing. But like, why is a giant blue horse with glowing red eyes? Like,
nothing says
greeting
welcome
you at
more
the airport?
than
You know, like, yeah,
weed is legal over there, right? That's what that is.
They're the first ones to do it.
Yeah, weed and shrooms now. So
that explains it.
Yeah, so I thought your question was going to go into weed or shrooms, but DIA is fun because I don't know if there's anything going on out there, but it is cool just to have some weird stuff out there. And I do like that, like DIA, like last time we were there, they were doing some reconstruction on the inside, and on like, you know, like they'll put up like a fence or a big area on where they're doing construction on the inside, and they have like these big signs of like what's going on and at DIA, and they'll be like, you know, a lizard man who's like working on the, you know, who's like working on this hole in the airport.
Okay.
And so they kind of lean into the weirdness, which I think is really cool.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Okay.
They kind of lean into the conspiracy theories of like what's really going on that we're doing back here. And it's kind of fun, but who knows what's going on, but it is kind of cool to have like Lucifer and some cool stuff going on out there.
Sounds like they're just hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going on, man.
Yeah.
You
This
guys
is
are
a
doing it
conspiracy
first.
podcast, right?
Yeah.
I just looked up the blue fur.
Come again?
Yeah.
What is it? What?
It's like,
I'm just looking at it.
It's like a 30-foot.
Has he taken any lives this year, or is his body count just one? Not since.
And I think he's anatomically correct. It's kind of weird, but no, like if you ever, it doesn't get foggy here much, but if it's foggy, you kind of get to drive by Lucifer. It's just like the demon, like in the mist. It's insane. Like, and to have that at your airport, I mean, come on, that's awesome.
Get on a flight.
That's freaking awesome.
Just don't sit by the door.
No, seriously, get on the flight.
You get on.
That's too bad. 'Cause like, if you get out of LaGuardia, they'll just rob you at the gate. So, I mean, different welcomes for different states, I guess.
Yeah, different ones. Yeah. Is LaGuardia, like, forgive my absolute, living on the west side of the Mississippi my entire life, but is LaGuardia, is that the one that's closest to Queens?
Both JFK and LaGuardia in Queens. LaGuardia is the one that's like,
they're both in Queens,
right on, like, built on the water that probably shouldn't be there.
Is that by Flushing Meadows? Like the area, like, so I've only been there a couple times, but
the Men in
when
Black
I did
one?
go, Men in Black. Yeah. Yeah. I was driving my rental car back from visiting my brother. He lived on Long Island at the time, but I was driving through Queens, like, to go back to the airport, and I had like an extra hour. I was like, oh, like, that's the Men in Black thing. I mean, I knew it was like the World's Fair site, but I had to like go there. There's nobody there. I got some really cool shots on my my old iPhone from that, and I actually printed them out. I have some on my wall over here, but like the big globe thing, like, freaking cool. And it was even cooler because there's literally nobody there. I was like,
I've never
only
really
one
seen a 2-pack unless like was it the US Open is going on? Yeah, it gets really packed.
Yeah, it gets wild in their US Open.
I bet. Yeah. No, I it's really cool to have like that old World's Fair site right there. And I'm sure like nobody goes there or cares about it at this, but like from somebody from out of town, I was just like, this is cool. I'm going there.
So these are real flying saucers, and the World's Fair was just a cover-up for their landing.
Why else would we hold it in Queens?
That's all we got. That was really awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. Really loved everything that we talked about. Even you just reaching out to us and saying you wanted to get on, and like, that was really cool. So, anything you want to add? Where can our listeners find you? Like, I know they're they're definitely going to check out your book we talked about before, Finding and Funding Great Deals: The Hands-On Guide to Acquiring Real Estate in Any Market. He's got a book.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to reach out, launched a podcast about real estate investing, the Property Squad.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. I was doing a lot of research. Like, it was just a lot of fun doing a lot of research and just reading about you and seeing what you're doing. And just like, I was like, this is the guy that's going to be able to talk to us. Like, this is awesome, So I really appreciate that, man. You were like awesome sport and coming in and talking to us. So
Yeah, dude. Anytime you guys want to have me. Cool, guys. Well, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Anson. Make sure you pick up Anson's book, Finding and Funding Great Deals, the hands-on guide to acquiring real estate in any market. You can catch that on Amazon and any bookstore online. You can reach out to Anson at propertysquadhq.com, and you can check out his YouTube at Property Squad Podcast. Anson's got a lot of great information. Anson kind of laid out the blueprint for us, and he even introduced Blucifer. So what are your key takeaways? What do you guys think? Caesar, what'd you learn today?
As a first-time home buyer myself, like it was tough. I wish I would have had this interview when I was going through my process. But the thing I learned the most was the strategies to try to find out if you're going to purchase something that's a good deal. I like how you broke it down into numbers, and that's something in the future I'm definitely going to use.
Chris, what'd you get from this, man?
I thought that was interesting when he said, what did he say? Remember to go through your lenders first, know what your limit is, and know your amount of money you can borrow. I didn't honestly. I had no idea. I thought you just pick your place and then you just go for it, But I think that's steps. He think that's probably the first thing or the most important thing, because then you have to know your limits and know what you can afford. So I think that was probably the biggest key take for me, is that just understanding what I can afford, what I can't afford. So, but other than that, it was very good interview. I actually learned a lot based on what he taught us or with the information he gave us.
I thought Chris was going to be like, well, I didn't know they still made houses, but apparently. I thought they stopped making them.
Wait, all you guys have houses? Victor, what'd you take away from this, man?
I thought Anson had some great feedback of just how to get into real estate investing, which honestly, I always thought it, as we talked about it earlier, just fix it and flip it. Yeah, he just opened my eyes up to house hacking, just renting out, just different ways to really how to make income with real estate, which I thought was just really good advice. And I'm also never flying into Denver again, so...
If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to name drop this podcast to your friends and family. We encourage you to be an active part of our community. Whether you have questions, suggestions, or want to share your thoughts on topics we can cover, we want to hear from you.
To stay updated on our new content and to join in on the discussion, check us out on Twitter at I'm Not Dumb But, TikTok and Facebook pages at I'm Not Dumb But, and leave some comments on our Facebook.
All right, everybody, stay curious. Bye.
Peace.